Hi. How's it going? You know, while I was thinking about starting this recording, I was going to say something along the lines of, I have nothing better to do today than play this game. And then I realized that, well, isn't that the entire point of a hobby? That it's not exactly productive? I mean, this is what I'm doing in my spare time. So, it's not, of course it's not going to be as productive as, say, my school life or any of the jobs I've worked in the past. Of course it's not going to be any of those things because it's a hobby. It's gaming. It's not, by design, it is not productive. And, you know, I think that's okay. I think it should be okay to normalize having hobbies that aren't productive in any way whatsoever because they're hobbies. I mean, that's not to say there aren't productive hobbies, like working out, which I do every once in a while. But there is absolutely no reason that that needs to become the standard, to which all other hobbies are compared, you know? Some people are just too invested in the word productivity and everything it implies. Like, I realize that being productive is inherently a good thing when done correctly. But this culture's obsession with it is borderline unhealthy. I mean, if I, for whatever reason, were to suddenly take up a hobby that were, in some way, the extension of my job, I don't think it would be possible for me to be more miserable. Hobbies are supposed to be fun. Entertaining, yes. Educational, maybe. That depends on what you do, but productive, I mean, they can be, but I don't think, like, that's the primary purpose of a hobby. You get my drift? I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of that productivity doesn't really mean anything in the long-term scheme of things anyway. Like, when I die, I'm not going to be unhappy that I didn't spend more time at the gym. I will enjoy the time I did spend at the gym, and that will be the extent of it. Now, as for gaming, I don't really think there's a hobby that's, you know, more varied or widespread. Could be wrong, like, perhaps if you're the type of person who enjoys reading comic books, there's a lot of variety in those things. But the possibilities that video games, such as the one I'm playing right now, provide in terms of entertainment value is simply staggering. I don't think I could think of something that even comes close. That being said, there is also more to life than what hobbies one has. I mean, I play games all the time, but I wouldn't consider it my singular personality trait. There's more to being a person than just what you do. I cannot simply rely on my hobbies to characterize me as a person, you understand. For one thing, people need to develop the ability to think for themselves. I know that sounds sort of, stereotypical of me, but well, I really do mean it. There is nothing more frustrating to me than a person who lets the things they do in their spare time define them. It is, quite simply, a waste of a perfectly good personality. Now, I wouldn't claim that having a unique or interesting personality is mandatory by any means. I mean, this is not a work of fiction. We are not characters who need to be fully developed in any particular way. But I myself have learned the hard way that if you are not a fun person to be around, relationships are difficult to maintain. Well, I say learned the hard way, but it would probably be more accurate to say that a lot of my relationships, friendships, and so forth have ended simply because of geography. See, whenever I finished a level of schooling, like elementary or middle or high school or whatever, and moved on to the next level, all of my friends would go to a different school, and we lived far enough apart that school was the only place we could really see each other, and that was about the extent of how long the relationship lasted. This happened every time. Now, thinking back on it, there's definitely almost certainly things I could have done to maintain those relationships. I could have tried harder to stay in contact with my friends outside of school, but to me, that's really all school was. It was a place to either learn or hang out with your friends, and home was for doing homework and maintaining your hobbies. I see now that it was foolish of me to think there was such a clear division, but I can't change the past now, can I? Now, in college, the story was a little different. I made some great friends in college from the very first day I moved into my dorm, because they were my roommates. They were roommates. The frustrating part about that relationship, though, is how quickly it ended. I mean, I began college in fall of 2019, which means that my spring semester the next year, in 2020, was rudely interrupted by the onset of a particular virus, whom I'm sure needs no introduction. So they threw us out of the dorms, and since my friends and I lived on opposite ends of the state, maintaining contact became more difficult. We managed it, of course. We would hang out online and play games and so forth, but there was definitely more we could have done. That summer, we even went on a vacation. A couple of us. A lot of us ended up being unable to make it, but I am eternally grateful to the person who put it together because... yikes, that was the last vacation I ever went on, huh? Haven't been on one since. But the next year, when we moved back into the dorms... well, it happened again, didn't it? I had only been living there for a month or two when the virus got worse again, and so they threw us out again. And this time, I don't really think there was anything we could have done to save it. Well, okay, perhaps that's a bit of an exaggeration, but what happened next certainly wasn't a boon to the relationship, you know? So that spring, having been thrown out of the dorms, a few of my friends decided they wanted to rent a house together. I thought that sounded like a great idea, but I wasn't able to make it happen that semester. Now, eventually, the friends who did manage to snag a house together, they contacted me and said the landlord was breathing down their neck. There was an empty room in the property, and he was pressuring them to find someone to fill it. So they were asking me to sign a lease for the next semester. Now, remember, the next semester started in fall, and this was still in spring, so it was a long ways out and a bit of a commitment to make, but I wanted to help my friends, so I did it anyway. Time passed, and I wanted to make sure that they were actually going to be staying in that same house the next year, so I contacted them about it, and repeatedly, they would brush me off. For reasons I couldn't exactly discern, they just didn't want to be there anymore. When I finally managed to get a straight answer out of them, it wasn't really the one I was looking for. They said they weren't going to be able to make the commitment that I had made. So, essentially, I was now stuck with the lease on a property I didn't want. I was going to be rooming with a bunch of strangers for the year. Fortunately, when I explained all of this to the landlord, they were exceedingly kind in allowing me to back out of the lease that I had signed. I will forever be grateful for them to that. Surprisingly enough, that wasn't actually the death blow to the relationship. What eventually killed what we had was when most of them ended up moving out of state afterward. I was kind of upset by that. Especially since they hadn't told me they were planning that from the beginning. But either way, that was last year. I've not made any new friends since. It hurts a little bit. I did actually try to re-establish contact with them a little more recently, but there was no answer. A lot of them have left the group chats and channels that we used to be a part of, and I don't know how to find them anymore. I'm not happy. I have no one to talk to. But I suppose there's nothing I can do about that now. So I guess let this stand as a lesson to the impermanence of relationships? I'm not entirely sure. Whatever, it felt good to get that off my chest at any rate. If I'm entirely honest, I'm not really sure where to go next after sharing that story. Do I simply try to find some new friends like nothing happened? Would that even be possible? I mean, I've never been the kind of person who has an easy time making them to begin with. Every setback feels like an eternity sometimes. I mean, I feel like this should go without saying, but there are a lot more factors to this situation than just make some new friends. I mean, I feel like part of it goes back to what I was talking about before, about, needing to be a likable person. I've striven my entire life to be a likable person. I've designed my entire personality around it. Nothing brings me greater joy than hearing someone laugh at a joke I made. But again, it takes a lot more than an interesting hobby to be likable. Are you a fun person? Do you think about others over yourself, even in the most dire of situations? I mean, not everyone can be everything, and that's okay. But, like, without at least a few qualities to draw people to you, what do you have? Now, on the topic of being a likable person, there's something to be said for entertainers. That's kind of why I wanted to be one my entire life. There's more to entertaining than just checking some boxes, though. For one thing, to be an entertainer, you have to be good at what you do, which I am clearly not, as evidenced by whatever the hell that was. Couldn't have just moved one tile closer, huh? I think that's the first time I've actively commented on the game the entire time I've been playing it. There's a reason for that. That reason, namely, is that I find just commentary exclusively about the game to be somewhat boring. I mean, anyone could tell you that I failed the mission. Anyone could tell you that my soldiers shot and missed. Anyone could tell you that, well, you get the idea. So I try to talk about things that are more unique to me. My life, my story, that sort of thing. I find the entertainment is more fresh, unique that way. At least I hope it is. So I have nothing more to say about this situation, except that I miscalculated how far away the terminal was. Silly me. Well, nothing more to say about the situation, except that it's kind of killed my enthusiasm. Normally, I try not to let that happen. I mean, it's a game, it's a hobby, it's supposed to be fun. But failure isn't fun. That's kind of the point, isn't it? Should have brought a specialist, but I didn't have one. He was wounded. This is the first mission of the game. I have very little choice in what I do. But enough. I could sit here and make excuses all day. But I'd rather just call it a night. Go to bed. Straighten myself out. Come back fresh tomorrow. I hope that's alright. Well, this campaign's not off to a great start. I hope I can salvage it. But until then, this is Jake, keeping my promise to nobody. Signing off.